Hi guys, and welcome to the second installment of the interview series. My name is Tunny, and I'm here today with Swanny. My man, how are you doing?
Not bad, not bad. Taking time out of my busy schedule of playing too much Call of Duty to chat to you, but yeah, looking forward to it.
I mean, that doesn't sound like you playing too much COD at all.
Oh yeah, definitely not. In moderation. No, especially with obviously that I'm sure we'll speak about the whole Call of Duty World League. I've been putting in more hours than I ever have before.
Well, yeah, we will be speaking about that very, very soon. But first of all, I just want to ask you, how's the team going? Because obviously everyone's sort of expecting you guys to probably go on to win the first season at least. You know, I mean, a lot of people have got a lot of expectations for your team.
Yeah, I've said this a few times before. I actually mentioned it to someone yesterday that I don't really care about anyone else's expectations, as bad as that sounds. Although I kind of acknowledge that there's at least an element of pressure on us, I guess, from the supporters or people who follow Call of Duty Esports in general, that we should do well, just given the sort of on paper skill of the individuals in the team and the team itself. But as far as like expectations and all that's concerned, I'm more concerned about our goals as a team and internally.
Yep.
And meeting our own expectations as players. So the fact that people have labelled us sort of a God Squad or a team who should theoretically win everything within Europe, that doesn't really bother me. I'm more concerned about, as I said, just achieving what we want to achieve as a team.
And what would that be?
Coincidentally, it's just about the same as everything that I've mentioned that I'm not acknowledging from everyone else. So it's, winning the majority of things in Europe, hopefully getting out to the US a few times this season before champs, obviously qualifying for champs, but I don't want to look further ahead than that. Qualifying for champs, prior to that, doing well transatlantically, hopefully, but that isn't necessarily, unlike previous seasons for us, that isn't necessarily the pinnacle of competition now. Because we have this just stable, consistent platform of competition within Europe, I guess that's also that is sort of our foremost concern, I guess, is placing well within Europe, and then alongside that, it's traveling over the US and placing well there. So just not dominance, but decisive victories in Europe, I'd like to say, and then hopefully that transfers over to the US.
Yeah, and just to touch on what you said before, I mean, a lot of people don't like, whenever I mention it to them or whenever it's mentioned in interviews, don't like the term God Squad. I mean, it's been one of those things like every time it's ever mentioned, it's like, oh, well, it's not all about the individual players. So, I mean, looking back in the past, not necessarily with teams yourself have been in, but I mean, we can talk about that specifically, but why do you think previously they haven't necessarily worked as well as other people have expected, if you like?
I mean, some have, some haven't. It's, the term isn't definitive. It doesn't. It's so subjective that it's down to the individual's opinion. Whoever says the team's a God Squad. There are so-called God Squads who people have termed who have worked, and there's some who haven't worked. Again, the fact that some haven't worked and some have is just testament to the fact that individual skill is almost always eclipsed by superior chemistry and superior teamwork. It's a team game. I don't really like any sort of individual rankings or classification because there's no relevance to individual statistics in the game. It's, as I said, it's a team game. The only pertinent statistics are team statistics. When people try to come up with these, I mean, I could go off on another tangent about statistics, but when people try to come up with these rankings of players, I guess they don't really count for much. Because there's no unequivocal way of categorizing players like that.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those things. It's been thrown around on Twitter the past few days, actually, hasn't it? I think who is the best AR in Europe or the world or whatever, and obviously your name's being thrown about, people like Marky, etc. But I suppose, I mean, you're 100% correct. It is a team game, communication, etc. is the biggest thing. And so, do you think for that reason that's why your squad's working out itself? It's more down to your communication, your teamwork.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's no doubt that we somehow. in numerous situations in game will compensate for mistakes by, being superior individually in certain circumstances, which is not bad, but that's not what you want. But I mean, the foundation, the core of any team should be teamwork, should be chemistry, communication, all those attributes which are formed together, rather than relying on individual players or flashes of brilliance. That I think that's something we learned when the Americans first came over on Modern Warfare 3 in the old EGL events at the Norbreck of Blackpool, which I'm sure you're familiar with. And that was one of the first lessons we learned. That's when we really were taught the importance of teamwork.
Something I want to touch on while we're on about the CWL is specialists. I want to know your thoughts on that, because I've seen a lot of social media talk about it. A lot of people piping up on Twitter saying, "Oh, specialists, etc." Like, I mean, I don't want to call anybody out, but I've seen rated talking about it quite a lot, saying, "Oh, they only won because they have this specialist." But my point of view, both teams have these things. So for me, I mean, obviously there's a lot of talk around it, a lot of different things, but for me, I think a lot of people are trying to adapt to specialists. It is something new, but my argument is both teams have it. If you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah. If we had this discussion a few years ago, I admittedly I probably would have been a staunch advocate. Well, not a few years ago, but 3-4 years ago, I'd have been a staunch advocate of removing them. I think.
Yeah.
As futile as that is, and I'll go on to explain why. But for example, when kill streaks were first implemented, I was strongly against them.
You and a lot of people, I think.
Yeah, and I didn't actually publicly voice my opinion because I kind of waited to see how it all played out. And then, a few months down the line, I thought, hang on a minute, it's actually a sensible introduction, I guess, into competitive for numerous reasons, and it's not that bad, and it actually adds another element to the metagame. And as I've matured, I guess, as a player over the past few years, and I've played more and more, I understand the importance of these features, both to us as a competitive community and to the developers who've actually created them. So honestly, I have absolutely no problem with specialists, but I can sympathise with those who do, because they are different. They do. I don't want to say unpredictability, but because this is the first time that specialists have been included, it's sort of a teething period, and the people don't necessarily know how to use them in the correct. I mean, we could go on forever about this, but people perhaps don't know when to use them in the correct situations, or they aren't accustomed to when they're going to be used, so they can't counter them or play around them. And people have said, they perhaps aren't counters to specialists or whatever. The bottom line is, for me as an individual, I'm probably not the best person to speak to about it, because I don't really care, and I quite enjoy them in the game. If they weren't in the game, I'd still enjoy the game because it's Call of Duty. There isn't a feature that they could. I don't think there's a feature that they could put in now that I'd say, "Wow, this has ruined Call of Duty for me." I'll continue playing it no matter what's in it.
The core elements are there. Obviously, I mean, as a sort of somebody who I used to be the same. When I used to play COD 4, and then we moved on to the different games. Everything was quite restricted. It was all literally down to a communication gun skill, etc. Everything like that. I was very much that way, but I think it brings something different. It's a completely different game because of specialists. And I agree with you though. I think whatever they put in, I don't think it's ever going to be too sort of out there for it to be deemed something that can be sort of completely ejected from the game.
Oh yeah, and I do, just to reinforce what I'm saying, I actually really love the concept of specialists, but I think obviously it takes time, especially for competitors whose whole prerogative it revolves around fairness and what's the word? Just a balanced platform of competition, I guess. A simplistic platform, as you said, taking it all the way back to COD 4 and things where there wasn't that much in the game. For competitors, everything revolves around that, and it's going to take some time for people to accept deviation away from that, like we did with the score streaks. But you know, everyone by the end of that season, everyone warmed to the whole concept of score streaks, and now they're a staple within competitive COD.
Okay, so moving on slightly, a lot of people have been talking about Excel, the team obviously, and the CWL, and you smile about that, but I want to ask you, as somebody who probably scrims them, and I don't believe you have actually played against each other as of yet in the league? Am I
No,
right?
we haven't.
No. So what do you think? Do you think these guys are the real deal, so to speak? Do you think they could compete with the likes of yourselves and Infused on LAN events, or do you think it's just something you're going to have to wait and see?
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, I don't want you to go on and bash them or anything like that, because
don't worry.
I know.
I'm not particular. Well, sorry. I'm particularly reluctant to put focus on any teams at the best of times or any of our competitors. So I don't really like to judge them before we play them, if that makes sense. I don't like to approach a certain matchup with favor or a certain matchup with added confidence, I guess, because they're not as good, or reluctance because they're one of the best teams. I approach every matchup with the same sort of flat mentality of let's just get the job done. It doesn't matter who we're playing against. So I haven't really delved that much into speculation of whether they're going to perform on LAN, etc., etc. I'll leave that up to
themselves,
I guess, and what actually happens when they end up coming up against a top team at a LAN event, or it may be. There's certainly a disconnect from online to LAN events.
Yeah,
they're both inherently different arenas, I guess, but that doesn't necessarily say that there's a correlation between good online performance and poor LAN performance. Mm-hmm. A team could be excellent online, but they can also be, good on LAN. A lot of it. The vast majority of instances isn't even down to connection, why teams don't particularly meet their own expectations or expectations on LAN. It's down to their mentality and how they actually approach that event. So it's not even to do with a team just having an advantage online. It's to do with them acknowledging everyone else's opinion and then approaching the event with a different mentality and playing differently on LAN. That's the biggest tip for. I mean, I'm not going to give tips to Excel. I wouldn't say I'm qualified, but the biggest tip for any players, perhaps who've played online for a substantial period and are looking to attend their first event, is never deviate from how you play online. Never change up your strategies or anything. Ensure that however you've been practicing online, however you play online, is exactly you replicate that exactly online. So you challenge the same gunfights, you make the same situational plays, the same decisions, because once you start moving away from that, you get out of your comfort zone, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I suppose I said it is going to be up to themselves to see if they can sort of replicate their online form at an event. It is a big question on everyone's lips, so to speak. But we'll move on from then. That was just a quick one I wanted to put in. Moving on to something else, something that you've just recently started doing, your streaming. Why did it necessarily, because I feel as if the big boom of everyone streaming was maybe about a year ago, 2 years ago, where everyone started doing it. Why is it necessarily taking you to this point to start doing it?
Two main reasons, I guess. Number one, my internet wasn't capable of streaming. The good old northeast of England, living on a hill.
I know.
In a village in the middle of nowhere, doesn't particularly provide suitable speeds, I guess. So it wasn't until Ghosts, I think, that I actually got the internet that I could stream. Took me another year or so procrastinating to actually find a suitable computer. But aside from that, perhaps people don't know that I'm not naturally an entertainer, and I'd never commit to any form of entertainment. I'd never any sort of entertainment supplementary to how much I play the game. I'd never dedicate any more time away from competing and my passion of performing in game and playing as a professional, unless I was enjoying it. And I just didn't feel until until fairly recently that I was, well, I'd say the Optic House actually. So back in, that was the first time that I consistently streamed, which was back in January, I think. And it wasn't until then that I embarked upon that journey because I didn't feel like I'd enjoy it. And if you're not going to be enjoying it, this goes for anything. This goes for streaming, YouTube, anything, absolutely anything. If you don't enjoy creating content in any medium, if you don't enjoy creating YouTube videos, that lack of enjoyment in the process will then be reflective of the finished product, and thus it will be reflected on the viewer. So the chances are that if you're not enjoying producing it, the viewer isn't going to enjoy watching it.
Mm-hmm.
And that I didn't want to do it
just for the sake of doing it.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't want to do it for the sake of it. I didn't want to do it because it was mandatory, because everyone else did it. Mm-hmm. And obviously, my personality isn't particularly eccentric, etc. It doesn't lend itself well to entertainment, I guess. But the more I streamed at the Optic House, I think that was sort of a turning point for me. And I thought, forget about the end. Forget about.
I tell you what, Swan. Sorry, I'm just going to pause you there. We'll come back to this in a second. I'll be back in literally 1 second.
No problem, man.
Sorry, man. 2 seconds.
Oh, no problem.
Day 2. Day 3. Day 4.
So much later that the old narrator got tired of waiting and they had to hire a new.
Alright, okay. They'll just edit that out, obviously. I know I was making. They might want to actually edit this one in. I was actually making chili, yeah. So I made it, mince in everything, and usually what we we'll put on the lowest heat and just let it, So I accidentally put it on the highest heat, and it's been cooking away for half an hour. I'm sitting here, you're answering the question, and I'm like, that smell. Chili on fucking fire was the smell, and oh my god, no, you just had the worst nightmare ever. So yeah, I was like, Christ, he talks, doesn't he? Come on. Right. Anyway.
You want me to just pick up? I'll pick up from where I left off. I think we were talking about.
Yeah, go on, continue.
What were we talking about? God.
I think it was about your streaming and how you didn't want to just do it for the sake of doing it.
Yeah, so as I said, I'm not particularly inherently. My personality isn't inherently suited to entertainment, I guess. I'm not eccentric. I'm not particularly out there. But as I said, the more I streamed, or when I first started streaming at the Optic House, I realised that doesn't necessarily need to be the case. Mm-hmm. As long as you're sort of entertaining, as long as you're holding one, as long as you're holding one viewer, as long as you have anyone watching, you're entertaining them. So, it's not. You shouldn't. Like, I didn't think of it as an obligation anymore. I just thought I'm actually entertaining people, I'm enjoying the fact that I think one of the main things for me as well was I have the opportunity to communicate consistently with like people who support me, who I haven't previously, because obviously I've been famously inactive on Twitter, social media, etc. Whereas things like Twitch or any streaming platforms, because of like the chat feature, it's an instant medium of communication.
Yeah.
So people I can just be sit there playing public games. I see a question, I can just answer it instantly.
Yeah.
That's one thing which appealed to me, was I could actually communicate and have conversations with people who support me, or people who'd followed me for ages would come in the stream and say, "Wow, I'm glad you're streaming," and stuff. So that was a big part of it, I guess, just actually seeing that, having the opportunity to see that support on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm. Right, okay, I'm going to move on to the community questions. So first of all, I think it is Josh CSGO tweeting about COD. What is your greatest achievement to date?
I'll give him a few, because that's like a really hard question. COD XP 4th. Yeah. Granted, it wasn't the most competitive of settings. We were essentially playing a public rule set, but it was still a huge achievement for us to come 4th under those circumstances with that team.
Mm-hmm. The old Imperial team.
Yeah, and that was also a significant period in my career, which was the catalyst for me actually wanting to pursue it professionally. So COD XP, and I'll give a combination G3 particularly and G2. Mm-hmm. Even though we fell short in both occasions, we managed to reach the final. And G3 especially because it was in front of thousands of spectators on home soil.
Yeah, I love that.
You know yourself. The fact that was in the UK was so significant for esports, and I'd love for there even to be another replica of that event sometime, because that was probably my favorite. Well, yeah, definitely my favorite event on UK soil. I think just to be inundated with support and throughout the entire event was just a surreal experience, because we, as competitors, we'd only really experienced that overseas.
Another question that I don't necessarily agree with completely, but why? Sorry, Circus has asked, why is there such a huge skill gap in NA and EU COD, and how is it fixed? I don't think it's huge, personally, but
yeah, no, it's fluctuated. It's fair to say. There used to be a monumental skill gap back when the Americans first came over, and we realised that they were far better than us on Modern Warfare 3, and they taught us important lessons in teamwork, etc. I think the closest we've came to probably bridging the gap, I'd say, is the end of Black Ops 2.
Yeah.
Which coincidentally, or not if you believe it, was the period in which we were competing most frequently against NA competition.
Yeah. So you think it's more of a sort of
exactly.
playing against the better teams to get better yourself, so to speak.
So the more you complain, the more you compete against US competition, I think the more you'll find yourself improving. Evident with TCM's performance in their first season of the Pro League, MLG League, the fact that they went over there, they bombed it at the start. They had a pretty poor record, and they gradually gained that experience, built their record up, and they ended up finishing top 5 or 6, I think.
Yeah, they did. They did well. They did do well.
So it's just about how much you're exposed to that level of competition, and the more you, in answer to his question, how do you change that? How do you bridge the gap? Is just you need to play against North American teams more.
Got one more question from James Codd, and I think this one sort of answers itself, but he's asking you, what do you think about events being made over 18s only and the effect on the youth community? I think the short answer on that is it's legal, unfortunately, at this moment in time.
This is a particularly pertinent question. I'm glad I think this is the first time we've actually publicly had your chance to touch on this, because on social media, etc., it's a pretty taboo. It's a taboo topic, I guess. I just haven't really delved into, because I'm sure there are a lot of upset people under 18, because there's so many. I'd say even the bulk of the community.
Yeah.
Because they're so passionate about COD and they want to attend these events, and they've had the opportunity previously to attend these events. But please understand that. Approach this from a logical perspective. Do you think that it's good for anyone that these events, that Activision, well, not Activision, but this ruling's been in place? It isn't because of Activision. It isn't because of Treyarch. It isn't because of anything to do with the publishers, the developers. It's simply to do with law in the respective countries. It's like what is it? Is it PEGI or so, whatever the rating is? There's some rating board with,
but
it dictates the rating of the game, and thus it's illegal to.
I think it's just one of them things, unfortunately, because I think, to touch on what I think you were trying to say, is that of course Activision would want all of these.
Oh yeah, believe me, if they could, it would, and I know personally, because this issue's been raised on numerous occasions with the guys at Activision, or if this was possible, we would have these under 18 events, and they've exhausted every avenue of trying to make this happen, but at the moment it isn't feasible.
Okay, well, a good answer. I think a lot of people will actually be probably happy with that one. But we're going to move on to a few quickfire questions, and then we'll tail this one out. But okay, so quickly, if you could change one thing about this Call of Duty, what would it be?
Yeah, I'm woefully bad at quickfire questions.
Maybe I'm saying them quickly. It doesn't necessarily.
Oh no, I one thing about this Call of Duty is more in-game support for competitive, I guess. So whether that's like weapon skins and stuff, all that stuff.
It's a big talking point, I think.
Yeah, that would be crucial. So I think if there's one thing I'd change is just. In fact, this isn't really a quick fire answer, mate, but that and increased focus on the arena, the league play variant.
Yeah, I think that's something a lot of people would like to see, but
I'll try and be a bit quicker on the.
no, it's fine. This 10-minute interview, minus the burning of the chili, is about 35 minutes long. But anyway, it's fine. No, it's fine. So if you to have, I'm not saying you have to replace anybody on your team, but if you to have anybody on your team possible, who would it be? Just one player.
Scub.
And the reason?
Crim because he brings a whole new element of leadership, etc., and he'd really kick our asses into gear. And Scump because he is just electric, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, obviously two of the best players in the world.
I would say a lot of other people, but like Formal Karma, Formal runs in the R, a
whole
lot of
lot
Karma.
squad. It's just I mean, obviously it's probably quite an easy question to answer if you like. But moving on again, your favorite ever Call of Duty?
Black Ops 2.
I didn't think you were going to say that. I thought you might have said COD 4 actually, but
no, COD 4 is good. Don't get me wrong, but everyone says COD 4 is good because of the nostalgic element of it. If people were to go back and play COD 4, no way is it better than Black Ops 2 overall. For an overall competitive title, no way. I'd say the top three are Black Ops 2. I'd even put Black Ops 3 in there, and then COD 4 in whichever order.
I think, as you said, like sort of the core members of the communities all loved COD 4, if you like. So I think that's why it's probably such a big answer for people. But all right, if you could import any map from any COD into Black Ops 3, what would it be?
It'd be a COD 4 map.
1,000,000%. I know my answer, but
Strike maybe. No. Trying to think of other COD 4 maps.
for me it would be Crash personally. But
Crash, yeah.
It'd be a
I said
hellish
Strike,
hard
just
time,
had the
that,
image
you
of
know.
Crash in my head. So yeah, Crash or Strike, one of the COD 4 maps.
yeah, definitely. So same with a gun from any other COD to bring into Black Ops 3.
COD 4 M16.
Obviously, I don't even actually know why I asked you that question. So you've already touched on some other things I was going to ask you. But what's your favorite ever team you've been in, apart from this one now?
Oh, I mean, that's a really good question. There's too many. I'd go as far as to say I don't really have a preference. Every team's had its highlights for me, so I'm shirking away from that one.
Right. So, final question before we close this one out. I want you to name the 3 funniest or even strangest things to happen in an event. Doesn't necessarily have to be about playing, anything like that. Just what, because with this interview series, I like to talk about, because a lot of people, when just typically when I say people ask you what do you do, and I'm like, oh, I commentate over COD, and they're like, oh, you sit in a room with like 500 other nerds or whatever like that, and I like to ask about sort of maybe the other side of things where everyone likes to go and have a laugh as well.
There are a lot of things which are in my head which are just entirely inappropriate for public knowledge. So for that reason, I probably need a bit of time to think about it. Straight. What? Give me one. Give me an example for you.
For me, oh god, I would think G1 and everyone at the Hippodrome and the insane amount of money that people are putting down on bets. It just doesn't even I don't want to name names because I don't want to get anybody into some sort of trouble, but just people throwing down ridiculous amount of money and walking in and thinking, what on earth is going on in here? Yeah.
G1, maybe another one from G1 would be the security getting called in between the impact and the impact and complexity match. I mean, nothing bad happened. It was just the volume of trash talk that was getting thrown back and forth. But yeah, there's a lot of strange and inappropriate things happening at events. There's a lot of eclectic mix of characters.
We don't want to make this NSFW for anybody, of course. But okay. So it's been a pleasure. I mean, obviously, I think we'd like to potentially get you on to maybe we can have you. I mean, me and you, and you specifically can talk about COD And
No,
all
yeah,
the
and I
interviews,
sincerely apologise
no,
for
no, don't worry, don't worry.
prolonging a 10-minute interview.
I'm sure everyone will be interested to hear what you said, but you know, it's just it's such an in-depth topic that you can have with some certain members of the community. It can go on and on and on, but still be entertaining at the same time. You know,
Sure, the guys at the Esports so will cut this down accordingly as well.
I hope they cut out the fact that I was running away to sort out my burning tea, but never mind. You might want to keep it in. But yeah, thank you very much for joining us, Swanny. And guys, make sure you give us a comment, like, and subscribe on the channel. Follow myself on Twitter, follow Swanny on Twitter, although I'd imagine you're already doing that. But guys, be back next week. We will have another interview coming up. And thanks again. And that's it. Fucking hell. I can't believe I left the fucking hob on. What a nightmare that is. Jesus. That's not good.
What happened? Was it fucking...
Mate, it wasn't necessarily on fire, but it was the fucking bottom of the pan is fucked. It's Shannon's gonna belt us when she gets in.
I'm going to get there and hope we will meet there.